Who will be the master of the universe that defines our future? I don't know. Right now in Rome, they're talking about a new pope. People think he's going to be the spiritual leader. It's, of course, going to be a tech. Sometimes the word we use is overlord, but really a lot of these tech geniuses have a spiritual dimension to them insofar as they define right and wrong and reality. Sam Altman is such a figure. He is the subject of the book, The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future by the Wall Street Journal's Keach Hagey. She joins me now. Hello, Keach.
Hi. Good to be here.
Let's start by, can you situate Sam Altman among the firmament of tech billionaires in terms of his background, his expertise, but also his personality?
So Sam Altman is sort of a new tech billionaire on the scene, right? For a lot of people, I think he kind of came out of nowhere when ChatGPT launched in 2022. But for people in the tech industry, he's sort of the insider's insider because for many years he ran Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator. It's an investment entity that has launched a lot of the companies that are the most successful in tech, so things like Airbnb and Stripe and things like that. So he had this incredible Rolodex of all the most important people in tech and is a prodigious fundraiser. And he was able to build outside of this sort of monolith of the FANG companies, right, of the Microsofts and the Googles, a new tech company using this amazing fundraising that came out of nowhere and really challenged the big guys.
Yeah. So was his genius as a finance guy or a coder and product builder guy?
Really a finance guy. He did study computer science and he, was interested in science and he did his own startup out of college. So he, is a tech CEO, but his real skill is raising money. He got funded by Sequoia when he was a sophomore in college.
Right.
So he's been doing this for a while.
So he got funded not because at that point he had the connections, because he had the insight, because he had the ideas. And what was his idea as a sophomore that they liked?
So he had this company called Looped that was from the flip phone era.
I hope it was spelled wrong. It must be spelled wrong.
Oh,
right?
Definitely. Right.
Okay,
yeah. Loopt. Right. Everything has the E.
And a small letter and two words mashed together. This is how you know it's a good company. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was basically trying to be kind of like Foursquare. It was like a social network that was map based, but for the flip phone era, which was technologically extremely difficult. They had to create relationships with every single wireless carrier for it to work. So it was just constant negotiation. So his life was just going in front of these wireless companies, these dudes who were like twice his age, telling them that he could see the future. And over and over again, they believed him and they invested and agreed to partner with this startup company. But ultimately, Loop was not successful because, of course, the iPhone came out and a mapping app for a flip phone was no longer really that necessary. So, but he made relationships during that experience that helped launch his career. Yeah,
in a way, you don't want it to be easy in the beginning. I'm sure it. What's the phrase about forging harder steel through, or steel forges steel? I don't know. There's a forge metaphor that probably applies to how frustrating it was for this young guy to talk to a person who had never even heard of URL.
Totally. And, it was a painful experience. He's talked a lot about how painful it was to spend 7 years running a company. And then basically it was sold for parts, or like roughly, whatever they raised. But out of that came these relationships with venture capital companies and, just experience in Silicon Valley, and especially this relationship with Y Combinator that, again, is like the root node of the power in Silicon Valley, that he was then able he was able to build a power base that made him a successful leader of Y Combinator.
Right. And it's interesting because the person who's usually in the position to greenlight the hopes and dreams of others, usually young upstarts, is often the seasoned billionaire. But he was the young guy, too. So Peter Thiel, who's his mentor and a billionaire, you can understand how he gets to pick and choose and be an angel investor and have some mentees. So Altman doesn't exactly have mentees, but he's in this position that is unusual for such a young person to be a dream maker.
Absolutely. And it was a little bit because of Peter Thiel's own help that put him in this position. So he does a startup, it fails. He meets tons of people in the course of doing that. And then after he sold his first startup, Peter Thiel actually bankrolled him to the tune of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars, to start his own venture fund. So then he becomes an investor and kind of surprises himself by realizing, like, this is the thing that I'm really good at, is investing.
So was what OpenAI is, or what just let me say it again. So AI as an idea, is this apparent that this is the North Star of tech, that this is going to be the next great leap forward, not to quote Mao Zedong, but there are many different tech ideas floating out there. And, for a time, Elon Musk would always try to convince you, and this is what he wanted X to be, the app for everything. But I have sensed that there is a convergence, that there was the internet and then the next thing was going to be AI. And so my question is, when did people begin to realize that? And when did Sam Altman begin to realize that? Was he on the forefront? Did he recognize it just from meeting with all these other people who were doing all these companies? And then he said, if we could have AI, this would change everything. How did that come about?
So Sam has been interested in AI since he was a kid. A lot of these techie folks, they read science fiction, and this concept of AI and the singularity has been a huge part of science fiction for decades. And that's where
as
pretty
a
much
dystopian concept, the singularity.
Depends. It depends. He's been interested in it since childhood. And when he was actually in college, he wrote down on a sheet of paper, what are the things I really want to work on? And AI and nuclear energy were near the top. So he's had this in the back of his mind for a long time. But the actual technology out there during that time, this is 2005, just wasn't there. And in fact, this was kind of still during the AI winter, as it was called, when it was really hard to get funding for AI, and the technology itself sort of seemed like a bit of a dead end. What changed is there were these huge leaps forward around 2012. There was this really important paper, the AlexNet paper, that showed that this neural network form of AI could really, it could identify images, and it could make these leaps that suggested that the dream of AI might be coming true. And because, Sam is very interested in the forefront of whatever is going on, he saw those little things happening and was able to, throughout the year of 2014, 2015, start to gather folks together to go after this new technology. I will also say that a big impetus for all of this, of course, is that it was happening inside Google DeepMind.
So I originally asked you, position him in the firmament personality-wise. So I don't know how much this matters, the range of different personality types of founders of world-changing tech companies is probably kind of limited. You won't find, the kind of the broad range of humanity. They're very driven. They're very smart. They probably have ideas about reshaping society that someone who's, picks up a lunch bucket and goes to work at the foundry doesn't have. Fine. And then there's also the concept of a lot of them think of themselves as good people, and then push comes to shove, and maybe the rest of us wind up not thinking of them as good people, or Google, which is founded on the don't be evil ethos. What does it really mean? But as much as you can, get at that question. If we met Sam Altman and he was given some sodium pentothal, would you say, okay, this guy gets it, this guy's kind, this guy's extremely egotistical? What would we say about him?
I mean, it's there in the title, right? Sam is extremely optimistic. This is the real thing that doesn't set him apart from the rest of Silicon Valley. Everyone in Silicon Valley claims to be optimistic, but Sam is really unusually optimistic. If you talk to people who are around him, they'll say what distinguishes him is he will if there is something that there's only a 1% chance that it will work, but it will really, really, really work, he will take that bet. He will take on levels of risk that other people just couldn't even begin to stomach, and that are especially when you start to think about how things work exponentially. The normal average human brain can't really process risk in that way, but he has this intuitive sense that if something is going to really, really, really work, even if it's vanishingly unlikely that it will, he's going to back it.
Is he optimistic and happy? Is he optimistic and hopeful and sunny? Does he have a sunny disposition?
It's a little of both, right? Like he has this public persona. You can see it from his blogging when he was at Y Combinator. It is actually very sunny. Oh, I think this is going to work. AI is going to be great. It's going to transform society for the better. Our lives are going to be better. But there also is like a deep undercurrent of anxiety that he has. It really comes from his childhood. His parents' marriage was a little tough, and they ended up splitting up. And so he will respond immediately if you reach out to him. That's one of the sort of signature things about him. So he's kind of tightly wound. But underneath it, all of this is this idea that technology will make the world better.
Is his optimism a question about his optimism? There is a certain kind of optimism. I guess Elon Musk would call himself optimistic insofar as he thinks his things are going to work. But he also thinks if his things don't work, we are all doomed. Mark Andreessen, essentially the same thing. So there's sort of an optimist who thinks they will be able to deliver us from impending doom. What does he think of the general state of the world if his OpenAI doesn't, and his dreams of a techno utopia doesn't come to pass?
He does not really share that with Elon Musk. I think the biggest difference between Sam Altman and Elon Musk is this sort of like emotional state that they have. You can see in these emails in the lawsuits between them that Elon Musk is writing to his co-founder, Sam Altman, and the team there, that, he has a lot of pain. I think we all know, like from his childhood, and he just gets very angry. And if something doesn't go his way, he immediately is like, "Well, we're all screwed."
Yeah.
Right. And
that's Musk. That's Musk.
That's Musk. Right.
Yeah. Who goes into demon mode.
Totally goes into demon mode.
Right.
And Sam is a conciliator. He will say, "Oh no, I didn't mean that. Like everything's going to be fine. This is going to be great." So he's always sort of trying to nudge everyone back to their happy place. That said, he does have, there are flashes of anger that come out, and he has, a glint in his eye sometimes about that. But he's nothing like the emotional reactivity that Musk has.
As someone who's reported on him, has he done anything to stymie or crush you or your reporting?
I mean, we've had our tussles for sure.
But is it more of a source, and sometimes there's a great source, but is it more of a semi-contentious source and reporter? Because I know the book went from unauthorized to authorized.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can, as I write in the book, Sam did not want this book to be written at all. He was pretty mad about it, actually. And he argues that it's premature, that it's not appropriate to put all this on one person, et cetera. So, yeah, we went back and forth for quite a while about it. I think, he ended up coming around in the end, and I think the book is better for it.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the optimism, though, I do think that there has been some reporting that he's essentially a prepper.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he is. I mean, a lot of this is like the culture of Silicon Valley. So this was like a thing that a lot of people were really into, in like the 2000 teens, 20 teens, where they would, buy land somewhere and stockpile guns and water and gas masks and all of that. So he was very much part of that culture. And to your point about optimism, like there is also like a paranoia, an anxiety underneath all of that his friend Peter Thiel talks about. Says that, this is a kind of a strange combination that Thiel chalks up to Sam's Jewishness, actually, right? That there's a kind of a paranoia and a needing to be prepared for the worst. Okay. Even if you're hoping for the best.
But they're both gay, and I wonder why that's sometimes a characteristic of an oppressed minority. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if you're a billionaire in Silicon Valley, being gay doesn't even scan like that. But it's surprising to me that Thiel wouldn't see at least some of that going on.
I don't know. I've never really seen that as been a source of his paranoia.
Or anxiety, I mean, more. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Sam has been very open that when growing up in the Midwest, he's from St. Louis, which was pretty conservative in the 90s, wasn't the greatest place to grow up gay. And it was kind of a tough experience. But by the end of high school, he had really like stepped forward. He was not just out, but he was like a leader that was, creating LGBT organizations and being like a voice in his school. So he was never really that scared about it, and was kind of on the leading edge of what we all now consider normal, right?
Yeah, yeah. I wonder if OpenAI is even subconsciously sort of a comment on that, as opposed to being in and closeted and versus out. I do want to ask about, you had an excerpt in the journal that a lot of people have paid attention to because it was about the short period where he was fired from the board. And this is exactly, everyone in the tech world and everyone in the business world wonders what the hell happened. And you fill in the blanks. And I think that I recommend that everyone read it. It's out there for everyone, and maybe it'll inspire you to buy the book. But I want to ask a couple of things, not exactly about the details, but about the structure of the company and what it says about Sam Altman and the people on his side of things. It seems to me, and you lay it out, that there was a board that was down to 6 people for a number of reasons. And there was this dynamic of the people who are worried about the dangers of OpenAI. And Sam Altman says he's one of them versus, okay, so the people who are worried about the dangers and are going to do something about it versus the Sam Altman side, which is more excited by the possibilities. Now, is that too reductive, or do I have that about right?
You're right that dynamic happened not just on the board, but like throughout the entire company. Yes. Yeah. Yes, that's true. And the big question in everyone's mind is like, how much was that what was behind the firing? And it's not behind it, especially because the people who ousted him, not only were they associated with this thing called effective altruism, but they saw that the stakes were getting higher as the technology was getting better. And suddenly what they were perceiving as lies from Sam were a much, much bigger deal if the company was about to embark on AGI, artificial general intelligence, which is this sort of North Star that the entire company was set up to achieve. So in a way, yes, like their fear was there and was a driver behind the firing, but the details were not specifically about safety or anything like that.
Right. It took a financial spark to light this tinder that was this kindling that was based a lot on the general tension between the worriers and, let us say, the optimists. Is that about right?
Yeah, well, if you mean by the financial spark, the unbelievable success of ChatGPT and all of a sudden...
No, what I mean is you're reporting on how they were shocked that there was this OpenAI is nonprofit, but there was this part of it that could seek a profit, and Sam Altman himself was running that. That was shocking to members of the board.
Well, I mean, the board... if you step back a little bit, the entire company, it's very complicated structure, but basically there's a nonprofit that is the actual entity that spun out a capped profit, like a for-profit that was underneath it. And the nonprofit was supposed to be for the benefit of humanity, not for financial gain. And the entire purpose of the entire enterprise was to make sure that they decoupled the profit incentive from pursuing AGI, because in the beginning they thought those two things together were very dangerous. But of course, you can't actually pay for all that compute without profits. And that tension was at the heart of the company. And in some ways, like that is ultimately what's behind the firing. It's not tenable, right? As it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you have more stakeholders and more investors, you can't really have this nonprofit structure that doesn't allow any of the investors a say in what happens at the company.
My instinct, my predilections are to be more worried or to want more caution in this potential world-changing technology than maybe the people who are incentivized to make billions of dollars want. And so therefore, I would side with the ones who are more into guardrails than glide paths. It's complicated, though, because Elon Musk associated himself with Team Guardrails. And if you look at Elon Musk, not to over-index for the personality of one guy, he doesn't seem to be characterized by caution in much of what he does. And when you look at a lot of what Sam Altman's done, it is for the benefit, it has benefited humanity thus far. So I just wonder how much our instincts or how much our heuristics of we should want for more guardrails in this endeavor, and therefore we're going to root for Team Guardrails. We, the livers of humanity, not the beneficiaries of OpenAI. What are the flaws of thinking that way, do you think?
Well, it's been interesting to see how that whole idea has really gotten quieter since Donald Trump was elected. And the whole debate is not nearly as centered around safety and speed, so safety versus speed, like it was in the years leading up to it. And I think part of it is because the technology has just gotten out into people's hands. And this idea that it could, jump out onto the internet and kill us all seems far-fetched, I think, to a lot of people. Not all people. There are definitely many people who still really fear that. But I think a little bit of it is just comfort with the technology that makes people less stressed out about the safety of it all. And the other thing is well, what are we talking about when we talk about safety? Like that word migrates. The meaning of that word migrates around as the company got more powerful. So I think at the very beginning, people were talking about existential risk, right? Like, is this going to kill us all or not? That's the big worry. And as things went forward, they would change the meaning of it to mean more like, alignment just means, does it do what you want it to do? Does it behave properly? Does it say please and thank you? Does it not say racist things? And this tension between, are we worried about existential risk or do we just want it to work well? That also started to tear at the company.
Are we sure that as people got more used to it, people were making the rational deduction that it's not that dangerous? Are we sure that it was an actual bona fide conclusion to come to, or more like, as we played with Gizmo, we thought he was cute and didn't realize that the gremlins were right around the corner if you'd have fed it after midnight?
I mean, it could be both, right? I'm definitely not sure. And it's not like the safety issue is completely gone, but it's a lot quieter than it was.
But the other part of the safety issue is, okay, it won't rise up. Maybe it won't rise up like T2 and kill us all, but could unemploy most of us. Isn't that part of safety?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the real risks here are economic, right? Like, how is this going to reorganize our society, and how is this going to concentrate power in the way that technology basically has done at every stage so far, right? Technology has not really served to distribute. It's especially in the last few decades, it has concentrated power in Silicon Valley and among the haves. So I think in many ways that's the big risk.
What happened to the members of the board who wanted him out and then were overruled when he came back quickly?
Oh, they were ousted, all but one. One is still on board, but that's Adam D'Angelo. Mm-hmm. So he remains on the board, but the other three are all were all removed from the board and are gone from the company.
Name them.
That's Helen Toner, Tasha McCauley, and Ilya Sutskever.
Right. So that's there are two women on the board. Both are out, and then another main person in this who was very worried about Sam Altman is Mira Murati, who is the chief technology officer. It does seem to me that you don't have to have taken a women's studies course to see this dynamic where the women were acting a bit cautious, or, maybe the men would call them school marms, and the boys were acting naughty and breaking things, but the boys won. I mean,
you're right. that did happen. There are women on the new board as well, and the company made it was a very awkward moment right after the firing when the old board was thrown out. They had a new, much smaller temporary board, and it was all dudes.
Yeah.
And, they said, well, we're going to get some women eventually, and they eventually did. But to your point...
real women, not AI-generated women, which can happen, right?
But look, this is a truth about Silicon Valley. Y Combinator, the very first class, so Sam was in the first class of Y Combinator in 2005. There were no women at all. None. Mm-hmm. There are 8 startups, 0 female founders. And, even now, maybe 11%, something like that. after all these years. Like it is a massive, massive, massive imbalance in Silicon Valley between the genders.
Is the background of the women and Ilya who were more worried about what Sam was doing, is it different? Is it more soft technology? I know that Helen Toner's director of Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology, so she's an academic. Tasha McCauley was former tech CEO, but a member of a board for Effective Ventures. Some of the other ones on the board, D'Angelo, who you mentioned, he was CEO of Quora and former Facebook executive. So that's my question. Was there a schism based on not the gender, but the hard versus soft technology backgrounds of the people who are pro or anti-Sam?
I think that that's a pretty good observation. That the difference is, though, that Adam D'Angelo was one of the people that voted to get rid of Sam.
Yes,
and he is a creature of Silicon Valley, like through and through. Couldn't be more. But
he's back now, right?
He is back. He's the one that sort of negotiated to stay on there. But he saw all the evidence and voted to oust Sam. So it's not like so clear, right, that it's just, the academics thought he was bad and the people who build things thought he wasn't, because, Adam kind of crossed over. And also, Ilya Sutskever he came from an academic background as well, but he also, builds things.
Are there any outside entities that can rein in or weigh in on the potency of this technology?
Well, there's the government.
Right.
And, Europe is working to regulate this. And there was the Biden administration passed an executive order to regulate it. And in the Biden administration's executive order, it was like models over a certain size need to kind of go before the government and make sure they're okay. That got tossed right out the window when Donald Trump got elected, which tells you a little bit about why there have been so many tech people sitting behind Donald Trump at the inauguration, for example, right? That if AI is really the future and the Trump administration wants to sort of stand for a much lighter touch than the Biden administration, that's what they've gotten so far.
Yeah, but my analysis of the government aspect of that, or regulation, there's no consensus that the Biden administration was right. This isn't an example to me of the Trump administration embodying a minority position, but, getting their way. Like, for instance, I think on broad swaths of environmental regulation, the public or the experts generally say that there should be some, and then the question is how much. With OpenAI, with AI, it's so new. There is a need to cultivate this and not let this world-changing technology fall into the hands or domination of our enemies. So while it is true that the Trump administration, as with crypto, essentially said game on, I also don't think that the next administration, even a Democrat, wouldn't go much further than the Biden administration did in allowing the technology to proceed. Do you think that's right?
I mean, it's an interesting case. One of the weirdest things about AI is how the urge to regulate almost like preceded the technology itself. So you saw that when Sam Altman and
that's a very good observation, right? Probably because it started from these science fiction books. So we could get our heads around the dystopian stories before the technology even existed. But go ahead.
Exactly. So the thing that brought Elon Musk and Sam Altman together was they were going to work together on a letter to the Obama administration to say, please regulate AI. And it was out of those conversations that then they thought, hey, let's start this lab together to form a counterweight to Google, because we're so freaked out by the idea that Google is AI is being developed inside this for-profit company that like the average person has no control over. So really, their very first act was regulate first before they even tried to build anything.
Excellent, just an excellent book, and of course, important figure who will be, I assure you, at the center of our consciousness for a long time to come. I've been playing a lot with ChatGPT and Claude and the rivals, and it's changing things in a hurry for me. And I think that so many people are having the same experience. So an excellent guide to all of this is Keach Hagey, and she has written the new book called The Optimist, Sam Altman, OpenAI, and the Race to Invent the Future. Thank you, Keach.
Thank you.